An abandoned dog with a mysterious number on its collar is left behind in a forgotten house. While fighting for survival, he catches the attention of a woman who soon notices something peculiar. With each step, the animal's dark past begins to reveal itself, bringing unanswered questions. But what she discovers is about to change their lives forever. The August sun was setting over the hills surrounding the country house on the outskirts of Asheville. The air was heavy with the scent of wildflowers and dry earth, signaling the imminent end of summer. On the porch of the old wooden house, a golden-haired dog with brown eyes lay with his head between his paws, his gaze fixed on the gravel path that wound its way to the main road. Buddy, as his temporary owners had called him, had spent the last 2 months enjoying long walks through the fields, chasing butterflies, and receiving affection from the children vacationing there. But now, the yard once filled with laughter and games was silent, and the aroma of family barbecues had been replaced by the smell of dust and abandonment. The family that had taken him in for the summer had left that morning, their suitcases loaded into the car, their faces a mixture of sadness for the end of the vacation and excitement to return to the routine of the city. Buddy had watched them leave, his tail wagging hopefully until the last moment, believing they would come back for him. But the hours passed, and reality began to settle in his canine heart. They had left him behind. As night fell, Buddy's stomach growled with hunger. He hadn't eaten since the previous morning when the family was still there. He got up, stretching his aching paws, and began to explore the surroundings of the house in search of something edible. His paws, once soft from constant care, were now rough and sore from walking on the rocky terrain. As he sniffed among the bushes, the collar he wore tingled softly. It was a special collar, different from those he had seen on other dogs in the area. It had a metal tag with an engraved number, 2468. Buddy didn't understand its meaning, but somehow felt it was important. Days passed and Buddy grew weaker. His coat, once shiny, was now dull and tangled. His ribs began to show under his skin, and his eyes, once lively, were now dimmed by hunger and desperation. Still, every morning he sat on the porch, waiting against all hope that someone would come back for him. It was on one of those mornings when Sarah appeared. She came driving an old blue Chevrolet, raising a cloud of dust on the road. She stopped in front of the house, curious about the state of abandonment of the place. When her eyes fell on Buddy, her heart shrank. Sarah, a woman in her 40s with her hair tied in a messy ponytail, approached cautiously. "Hello, little friend," she said softly, extending a hand towards Buddy. The dog, although distrustful at first, couldn't resist the kind gesture and approached, his tail wagging weakly. "Oh, you poor thing," Sarah murmured as she saw the animal's condition. Her hands gently ran over Buddy's body, noticing his thinness and the wounds on his paws. When her fingers touched the collar, she frowned. "What's this?" she wondered aloud, examining the engraved number. Sarah looked around, searching for any sign of the owners, but the house was clearly empty, the windows closed and the garden neglected. With a sigh, she took out her phone and began making calls, first to the local police, then to the animal shelters in the area. No one had information about a lost dog with those characteristics. While talking on the phone, Buddy watched her with hopeful eyes. There was something about this woman that reminded him of his trainer, someone from his past that he couldn't clearly remember but associated with safety and affection. As she hung up the last call, Sarah looked at Buddy with determination. "I can't leave you here," she said, patting his head. "Let's take you to a safe place and figure out what to do with you." Carefully, she helped Buddy into the back seat of her car. The dog, although weak, settled in with a sigh of relief. As Sarah started the engine, Buddy rested his head on the back of the seat, his eyes fixed on the house that had been his temporary home. As the car drove away, a mixture of fear and hope stirred in his canine heart. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in days, he felt he wasn't alone. The journey back to Asheville was a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah. As she drove, her mind raced thinking about what to do with Buddy. In the rearview mirror, she could see the dog curled up in the back seat, his tired eyes attentive to every movement. "What am I going to do with you?" Sarah murmured, more to herself than to Buddy. Her apartment in the city didn't allow pets, and her husband Tom was allergic to dogs, but something in Buddy's gaze prevented her from simply leaving him at a shelter. As they reached the outskirts of Asheville, Sarah made an impulsive decision. She turned towards a residential neighborhood where her friend Emily lived, known for her love of animals. She parked in front of a two-story house with a small garden and rang the doorbell. Emily, a woman with curly hair and a warm smile, opened the door. Her expression of surprise turned to concern when she saw Buddy in the car. "Sarah, what happened?" Emily asked, approaching the vehicle. Sarah quickly explained the situation while helping Buddy out of the car. Emily listened attentively, her eyes full of compassion. "Of course he can stay here temporarily," Emily said without hesitation. "I have space in the backyard and my Max could use a companion." Max, Emily's chocolate Labrador, poked his head out the door, curious about the new visitor. Buddy, upon seeing him, tensed up, a low growl escaping his throat. "Easy, friend," Sarah whispered, gently stroking Buddy's back. "No one's going to hurt you here." The following days were an adjustment for everyone. Buddy, although grateful for the food and shelter, remained distant from Max. He spent most of his time curled up in a corner of the yard, watching cautiously. Sarah visited every day, bringing toys and treats, trying to earn Buddy's trust. Slowly, the dog began to respond, wagging his tail when he saw her arrive. One afternoon, while Sarah was playing with Buddy in the yard, she noticed something strange. When throwing a ball, Buddy not only caught it with ease, but returned it following a specific pattern, as if performing a trained routine. "Emily, did you see that?" Sarah asked, intrigued. Emily nodded, equally surprised. "That's not normal behavior for a stray dog. I think your theory about his special training might be true." That night, Sarah stayed up researching on the internet about trained dogs and the meaning of the number on Buddy's collar. She didn't find anything concrete, but her determination to discover the dog's past grew. Meanwhile, at Emily's house, something unexpected happened. In the middle of the night, Max began to whimper, caught in a nightmare. Buddy, waking up to the noise, cautiously approached. To Emily's surprise, who was watching from the door, Buddy gently rested his head on Max, as if consoling him. The Labrador calmed down instantly. The next morning, Emily found the two dogs sleeping side by side, as if they had been lifelong friends. "Sarah, you won't believe what happened last night," Emily said on the phone, recounting the incident. Sarah smiled on the other end of the line. "Looks like our mysterious friend has more surprises in store," she replied. What neither of them knew was that this was just the beginning of the revelations about Buddy. In the streets of the neighborhood, a boy named Jake, known for his fear of dogs, was watching Emily's house from afar, intrigued by the new canine resident. Buddy's story was about to intertwine with Jake's in a way no one could have anticipated, marking the beginning of a series of events that would change the lives of everyone involved. The morning sun bathed the streets of the neighborhood, as Jake, a 10-year-old boy with large glasses and messy hair, peered timidly around the corner of the street. His eyes were fixed on Emily's house, where Buddy and Max were playing in the front yard. Jake had grown up with an irrational fear of dogs after an incident in his childhood. However, something about Buddy had captured his attention. Perhaps it was the way the dog moved, with a grace that seemed almost human, or maybe it was the intelligent look in his eyes. Emily, noticing the boy, came out onto the porch. "Hello, Jake," she called kindly. "Do you want to come meet Buddy?" The boy instinctively took a step back, but curiosity overcame fear. He won't bite me, will he?" Jake asked in a trembling voice. "I promise he won't," Emily replied with a reassuring smile. "Buddy is very special. Come, I'll introduce you." With hesitant steps, Jake approached. Buddy, as if understanding the situation, sat quietly, his tail moving softly on the grass. "Extend your hand slowly," Emily instructed. "Let Buddy smell you." Jake closed his eyes and stretched out his trembling hand. He felt Buddy's cold nose sniffing his fingers and held his breath. But instead of the bite he feared, he felt a warm tongue licking his palm. He opened his eyes in surprise and met Buddy's kind gaze. For the first time in his life, Jake didn't feel afraid in front of a dog. "You did it!" Emily exclaimed, clapping softly. In the days that followed, Jake began to visit Emily's house regularly. Under Buddy's patient guidance, the boy gradually overcame his fear. He learned to pet Buddy's soft fur, to play fetch, and even to brush him. Sarah, who continued to visit Buddy daily, was amazed by Jake's transformation. "It's incredible," she commented to Emily one afternoon. Buddy seems to have a gift for helping people. Meanwhile, Tom, Sarah's husband, noticed the changes in his wife. She came home later every day, always with stories about Buddy and his progress. Although he tried to be understanding, he couldn't help feeling a twinge of jealousy. One night during dinner, Tom finally spoke up. "Sarah, don't you think you're spending too much time with that dog? He's not even ours." Sarah looked at him surprised. "Tom, he's not just a dog. There's something special about him. You should come meet him." Tom shook his head. "You know I'm allergic. Besides, what will happen when they find his real owners? You're going to get too attached." The conversation ended in an uncomfortable silence, but Tom's words planted a seed of concern in Sarah. What would happen if she had to say goodbye to Buddy? Meanwhile, in the neighborhood, Buddy's presence didn't go unnoticed. Neighbors commented on the dog that seemed more like a guardian angel than a common pet. His ability to calm Max during storms, his patience with Jake, and his almost human behavior fueled speculations about his origin. One afternoon, while Jake and Buddy were playing in the local park under Emily's supervision, something unexpected happened. An elderly man walking by tripped and fell to the ground. Before anyone could react, Buddy ran towards the man, barking to call attention. Emily and Jake rushed to help, guided by Buddy. The old man, although frightened, was unharmed thanks to the dog's quick reaction. "That's no ordinary dog," the old man commented as they helped him up. "He reminds me of the rescue dogs I saw on the news after the big earthquake." The old man's words resonated in Emily's mind. Could it be that Buddy was a trained rescue dog? Was that the key to discovering his mysterious past? That night, while Buddy slept peacefully in his makeshift bed, Emily called Sarah. "I think we've discovered something important about Buddy," she said excitedly. "We need to investigate more about rescue dog programs." What neither of them knew was that this revelation was about to open a Pandora's box, connecting Buddy's past with events that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. The morning after the revelation about Buddy's possible past as a rescue dog, Sarah woke up early, her mind buzzing with questions and possibilities. Determined to uncover the truth, she began researching online about rescue dog programs in North Carolina. Meanwhile, at Emily's house, Buddy and Max had developed a morning routine. They played in the garden, shared breakfast, and then went out for a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors had already gotten used to seeing the peculiar canine pair, always closely followed by Jake, who now spent every free moment with the dogs. That morning, however, something was different. As they were walking, Buddy suddenly stopped, his ears alert. A distant sound imperceptible to humans had caught his attention. Without warning, he took off running, leaving Emily and Jake surprised and worried. "Buddy, come back!" Emily shouted. But the dog had already turned the corner. Buddy ran with a purpose, guided by an instinct he didn't fully understand. He arrived at a nearby park, where a group of children was playing near a creek swollen by recent rains. Among the shouts and laughter, Buddy detected a sound of distress. Without hesitation, he plunged into the water. The children, frightened, started screaming, attracting the attention of nearby adults. Buddy swam strongly until he reached a small girl who had slipped and fallen into the creek, gently dragging her towards the shore. By the time Emily and Jake arrived at the park, followed by a crowd of curious neighbors, Buddy had already pulled the girl out of the water. The little girl's parents, between tears of relief and gratitude, hugged their daughter while looking amazed at the hero dog. News of the rescue spread quickly through the neighborhood and soon reached Sarah's ears. She ran to the park, her heart pounding. Upon arrival, she saw Buddy surrounded by people congratulating and petting him. The dog, however, seemed oblivious to the attention, his eyes fixed on the girl he had saved, as if making sure she was okay. "There's no doubt," said an older man among the crowd. "That dog has been trained for rescue. Look at how he acted, with precision and calm. It's not normal behavior." Sarah approached Emily, who was holding Buddy with an improvised leash. "You were right," Sarah said, stroking the dog's head. "Buddy is special. We have to find out where he comes from." As the excitement of the rescue calmed down, a new challenge arose. Buddy's feat had attracted the attention of local media. That night, the story of the hero dog appeared on the news, complete with blurry images taken by witnesses with their phones. Tom saw the report from the couch in his house, his expression a mixture of amazement and concern. When Sarah arrived home, exhausted but excited, he confronted her. "I saw the news," Tom said, his voice tense. "Sarah, this is getting out of control. We can't keep that dog, you know that, right?" Sarah felt her heart sink. "Tom, you don't understand. Buddy is special. We can't just abandon him." "Abandon him?" Tom shook his head. "Sarah, that dog has owners somewhere, owners who are probably looking for him. It's not fair to them or to the dog for us to keep him." Tom's words, though harsh, had a point of truth that Sarah couldn't ignore. Buddy clearly had a past, a history that needed to be uncovered. That night, as Sarah lay awake in bed, she made a decision. She would contact rescue organizations across the state, search for records of trained dogs, do whatever it took to uncover the truth about Buddy. But a part of her feared what she might discover. If she found Buddy's original owners, would she be prepared to let him go? Meanwhile, at Emily's house, Buddy slept restlessly. In his dreams, confused images of floods, earthquakes, and people in danger mixed with the smiling faces of Sarah, Emily, and Jake. In his subconscious, two worlds struggled to reconcile, his heroic past and his present full of love and acceptance. The next morning would bring new challenges and revelations that would test the bonds formed between Buddy and his new friends and bring them one step closer to discovering the true identity of the mysterious hero dog. Dawn found Sarah sitting in front of her computer, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She had spent the entire night researching, sending emails to rescue organizations, and searching lost dog databases. The coffee cup beside her, now cold, was a testament to her determination. Meanwhile, at Emily's house, Buddy woke up with a start. His dreams had been intense, full of images of a past he couldn't fully remember. Emily, noticing his restlessness, approached to comfort him. "What secrets do you hold, my friend?" she murmured, gently stroking his fur. That morning, the neighborhood was buzzing with activity. News of Buddy's heroic rescue had spread, and local reporters were prowling the streets, hoping to get an interview or a photo of the hero dog. Sarah arrived early at Emily's house with bags under her eyes, but a look of determination. "I've found something," she announced, showing her phone. "There's a rescue dog training program in a nearby city. The number on Buddy's collar matches their identification system." Emily and Jake, who had arrived early to see Buddy, listened attentively as Sarah explained her discovery. "I spoke with them this morning. They're willing to check their records, but they need to see Buddy in person to confirm his identity." The news was received with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. On one hand, they were closer to discovering Buddy's past. On the other, they feared what that might mean for his future with them. "When do we have to go?" Emily asked, instinctively hugging Buddy. "Tomorrow," Sarah replied. "I've taken the day off work. We can leave early and be there before noon." Jake, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. "Can I come too?" he asked in a trembling voice. "I want to be with Buddy." The women exchanged glances, surprised by the determination of the boy who once feared dogs. "Of course, Jake," Sarah said with a warm smile. "I'll talk to your parents this afternoon." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Sarah had a heated discussion with Tom, who insisted she was too emotionally involved. Emily prepared Max to stay with a neighbor during their absence. And Jake, with his parents' permission, packed a small backpack as if preparing for a great adventure. That night, as the city sank into sleep, 4 souls remained awake, each grappling with their own thoughts and fears. Sarah lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how her life had changed since she found Buddy. Was she doing the right thing by seeking out his past? What if it meant losing him? Emily sat on her porch watching Buddy and Max sleep together in the garden. She wondered how Max would be affected by the departure of his new friend if it came to that. Jake, in his room, hugged a stuffed dog that he had ignored for years due to his fear. Now, thanks to Buddy, that fear had transformed into love and admiration. And Buddy, oblivious to human concerns, dreamed. In his dreams, he ran through open fields, swam in turbulent waters, and always there was someone to save at the end of the path. The next morning, before dawn, the group gathered in front of Emily's house. Sarah's old Chevrolet was loaded and ready. Buddy, sensing the importance of the moment, sat obediently in the back seat with Jake by his side. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, the car started, taking them towards an uncertain destination. What they would discover at the training center would change their lives forever, in ways none of them could imagine. The journey had begun, and with it the search for Buddy's true identity. But as they approached the answers, new questions arose. Would Buddy be ready to face his past? And would they be prepared for the consequences of what they might discover? The trip to the Rescue Dog Training Center was long and tense. Sarah drove in silence, her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Emily stared out the window, lost in her thoughts. In the back seat, Jake gently petted Buddy, who seemed to sense the tension in the air and remained unusually still. After 3 hours of driving, they arrived at a complex of buildings surrounded by training fields. A sign at the entrance read, "National Rescue Dog Training Center." As they parked, they were greeted by a middle-aged woman in uniform. "Welcome," she said with a professional smile. "I'm Dr. Johnson, director of the center. Are you the ones who called about the dog with the special collar?" Sarah nodded, introducing everyone and briefly explaining the situation. Dr. Johnson listened attentively, her eyes fixed on Buddy. "Interesting," she murmured. "Follow me, please." She led them to an office filled with photographs of dogs in rescue situations. Buddy seemed restless, his eyes scanning the images as if searching for something familiar. Dr. Johnson checked Buddy's collar and consulted a database on her computer. Her expression changed from professional to surprised. "This is incredible," she finally said. "This dog, his official name is Champion, was one of our best rescue dogs. He disappeared 2 years ago during a rescue operation in a flood. We presumed him dead." The revelation fell like a bombshell. Jake hugged Buddy tightly, as if fearing someone might take him away. "What does this mean?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Johnson sighed. "Legally, Champion is still the property of the center, but 2 years have passed. His reintegration into the program would be complicated," Emily intervened. "But he has a new life now, a family that loves him." The director nodded understandingly. "I understand, but you must also understand that Champion, Buddy as you call him, is an exceptionally trained dog. His skills could save lives." The silence that followed was heavy. Buddy, or Champion, looked from one face to another as if understanding the gravity of the situation. "I propose something," Dr. Johnson finally said. "Let's have Buddy go through some tests. Let's see how he responds to training. That will give us a better idea of how to proceed." Everyone agreed, albeit with some reluctance. Over the next few hours, they watched in amazement as Buddy completed obstacle courses, found hidden victims, and performed complex rescue tasks. It was evident that his skills were still intact. At the end of the day, Dr. Johnson gathered them again in her office. "There's no doubt," she said, "Champion hasn't lost his skills. He could return to active service with minimal retraining." Sarah, Emily, and Jake's hearts sank. Did this mean they would lose Buddy? "However," the doctor continued, "the bond he has formed with you is also evident, especially with the boy." She looked at Jake, who hadn't left Buddy's side all day. "I have a proposal," she finally said. "We could establish a special program. Buddy could live with you, but would come regularly for training and participate in rescue missions when necessary. He would be like a canine reservist." The proposal was met with a mixture of relief and concern. On one hand, it meant they wouldn't lose Buddy. On the other, it meant sharing him with the center and exposing him to potentially dangerous situations. "We need time to think about it," Sarah said, speaking for everyone. Dr. Johnson nodded. "Of course, take a few days. Meanwhile, Buddy can stay with you." That night, back in Asheville, the group gathered at Emily's house to discuss the situation. Tom, Sarah's husband, was also present, having been informed of the events. "It's a big responsibility," Tom said, surprising everyone with his supportive tone, "but also a unique opportunity. Buddy could have the best of both worlds, a loving home and the chance to use his skills to help others." Sarah looked at her husband gratefully, realizing that he too had been touched by Buddy's story. Jake, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. "I want Buddy to stay with us, but I also want him to help other people. It's what he would want." Everyone looked at the boy, surprised by his maturity. Finally, Emily summed up the general feeling. Maybe this is Buddy's purpose. To be a bridge between two worlds, helping both the people he loves and those who need to be rescued. As the group discussed the details and implications of the decision they were about to make, Buddy watched them from his corner. His eyes shone with an intelligence that seemed to perfectly understand the situation. The decision they would make would not only affect Buddy's future, but also the lives of everyone present. It was the beginning of a new chapter, full of challenges and possibilities. The days following were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. After long discussions and deep reflections, the group reached an agreement. They would accept Dr. Johnson's proposal. Buddy, or Champion as they now knew he was officially called, would live with them but participate in the training and rescue program. The news was received with enthusiasm by the training center. A schedule was established. Buddy would spend 2 weekends a month at the center to train and keep his skills sharp. In case of major emergencies, he would be available for rescue missions. The challenge now was to integrate this new reality into their daily lives. Sarah and Tom had to make adjustments to their apartment to accommodate Buddy, including installing an air filtration system to help with Tom's allergy. Surprisingly, Tom was more than willing to make these changes, having been deeply moved by Buddy's story and potential. Emily, for her part, became Buddy's primary caregiver during the weekdays when Sarah and Tom were at work. She established a routine of walks and games that kept Buddy fit and mentally stimulated. But perhaps the most notable change was in Jake. The boy who once feared dogs had now become a passionate animal advocate. He began researching rescue dogs and sharing what he learned with his classmates. His transformation didn't go unnoticed by his parents and teachers, who noticed an increase in his confidence and empathy. A month after the decision, Buddy's first training weekend at the center arrived. Sarah, Emily, and Jake accompanied him, eager to see how he would perform. To their surprise and joy, Buddy quickly adapted to the training routine. It was as if a dormant part of him had awakened. His eyes shone with determination as he navigated complex obstacle courses and performed rescue drills with astonishing precision. Dr. Johnson was delighted. "It's amazing," she commented as they watched Buddy work. "It's as if he never left the program. His instincts are intact." But the most impressive thing was seeing how Buddy effortlessly alternated between his role as a rescue dog and his role as a beloved pet. As soon as he finished a training session, he would run to Jake, Emily, and Sarah, seeking pets and playtime. "It's the best of both worlds," Emily said with tears of pride in her eyes. As the weeks passed, Buddy's fame grew. The story of the lost rescue dog who had found a loving home and returned to service captured the public's imagination. Local journalists requested interviews, and Buddy even appeared on a national television program about animal heroes. This unexpected attention brought new challenges. Sarah and Emily had to learn to handle media interest, always protecting Buddy's privacy and ensuring that his new fame didn't interfere with his rescue work or family life. One day, while walking in the park, they encountered the elderly man Buddy had helped months ago. The man was amazed to hear the full story. "I always knew that dog was special," he said, affectionately petting Buddy. "He's a true hero in every sense." Those words resonated deeply with all of them. Buddy wasn't just a rescue dog or a beloved pet. He was a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of how love and purpose can coexist and reinforce each other. One afternoon, as they watched Buddy play with Max in Emily's garden, Sarah reflected aloud, "You know, when I found Buddy that day at the country house, I never imagined it would lead to this. He's changed our lives in so many ways." Emily nodded, smiling. "And the best part is that this is just the beginning. Who knows what other adventures await us?" Jake, who had been listening, added enthusiastically, "Maybe someday I can be a rescue dog trainer too." They all laughed, but deep down they knew Jake's passion was genuine. Buddy had not only found his purpose, but had inspired others to find theirs. As the sun set over Asheville, Buddy curled up among his loved ones, exhausted but content. In his eyes shone a mixture of love and determination, as if he knew that each day would bring new challenges and opportunities to make a difference. Buddy's story was far from over. It was, in many ways, just the beginning of a new and exciting adventure. Autumn had arrived in Asheville, bringing with it cooler weather and the promise of new adventures. Buddy had perfectly adapted to his double life as a rescue dog and beloved pet. His training weekends had become an expected routine, and his ability to alternate between his two worlds continued to amaze everyone. One October morning, as Sarah was preparing for work, she received an urgent call from Dr. Johnson. "Sarah, we need Buddy," the doctor said, her voice tense. "There's been an earthquake in a nearby city. Rescue teams are being formed and Buddy is one of our best elements." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. They knew this moment would eventually come, but the reality of sending Buddy into a potentially dangerous situation was overwhelming. "Of course," Sarah replied, trying to stay calm. "When do they need to leave?" "A helicopter will pick up Buddy in an hour. Can you bring him to the meeting point?" Sarah looked at Buddy, who seemed to sense the urgency of the situation. His eyes were alert, his posture tense, as if ready for action. "We'll be there," Sarah promised. The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. Sarah called Emily and Jake, who insisted on accompanying her to the meeting point. Tom, surprising everyone, offered to drive. On the way, the group remained in tense silence. Jake hugged Buddy, whispering words of encouragement. "I know you'll do a great job, friend. You're a hero." When they arrived at the meeting point, a team of rescuers was already waiting. Dr. Johnson was there giving instructions and organizing the team. "Thank you for bringing him so quickly," she said, approaching them. "Buddy will be crucial in this operation." Sarah knelt in front of Buddy, looking into his eyes. "Be careful, okay? Come back to us." Buddy licked her hand as if wanting to reassure her. Then, with one last look at his family, he followed the rescuers towards the helicopter. Watching Buddy leave was one of the hardest moments they had experienced. Jake cried silently, Emily hugged him, and Sarah and Tom held hands, seeking mutual comfort. "He'll be fine," Tom said, surprising everyone with his firmness. "Buddy is trained for this. It's his time to shine." The following days were a test of patience and faith. News about the earthquake flooded the media, and the group was glued to the television, looking for any information about the rescue efforts. On the third day, they received a call from Dr. Johnson. "Buddy has located a family trapped under the rubble," she reported. "Thanks to him, we were able to rescue them in time. He's doing an incredible job." The news brought tears of relief and pride. Their Buddy was out there saving lives, fulfilling his purpose. A week later, Buddy returned home. He was tired with some minor bruises, but his eyes shone with the satisfaction of a job well done. The reunion was emotional, full of hugs, tears, and many dog treats. The experience had changed something in all of them. Sarah and Tom realized that their love for Buddy was strong enough to endure the anxiety of letting him go when necessary. Emily felt proud to have been part of Buddy's journey towards his true purpose. And Jake, inspired by Buddy's bravery, announced his decision to become a veterinarian specializing in rescue animals when he grew up. That night, as Buddy slept surrounded by his family, exhausted but content, they all reflected on how their lives had changed since that day when Sarah found an abandoned dog at a country house. "You know," Emily said, breaking the silence, "I think we didn't just save Buddy that day, somehow he saved all of us." Sarah nodded, gently stroking Buddy. "He taught us about unconditional love, courage, and purpose. He showed us that there's always a second chance if we're willing to take it." Tom, who had perhaps experienced the most dramatic change in his relationship with Buddy, added, "And he reminded us that sometimes heroes come in the most unexpected forms." As the night progressed, the family remained united, grateful for the lessons learned and excited about the adventures yet to come. Buddy had proved to be more than a rescue dog or a pet. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder that with love, determination, and a little faith, anything is possible. Copy retry O continua edit time flew by after Buddy's first rescue mission. His bravery and skill during the earthquake had turned him into a local celebrity. Newspapers published articles about him, schools requested visits so children could meet the hero dog, and there was even talk of making a documentary about his life. Sarah, Tom, Emily, and Jake found themselves navigating this new reality with a mixture of pride and protection. They wanted to share Buddy's inspiring story, but also shield him from too much attention that might interfere with his important work. One day, while walking in the park, a young woman with a golden retriever approached them. "Excuse me," she said shyly, "is that Buddy the rescue dog?" When they nodded, the woman continued with tears in her eyes. "My brother and his family are the ones Buddy found under the rubble after the earthquake. I wanted to thank you personally for sharing Buddy with the world. He saved their lives. This encounter was a turning point for everyone. They realized that Buddy's story didn't just belong to them, but had the power to inspire and give hope to many others. Inspired by this, Jake proposed an idea. What if we use Buddy's fame to help other abandoned dogs? The suggestion was met with enthusiasm. Working together, the family organized an adoption campaign in collaboration with local shelters. Buddy became the face of the campaign, his story of abandonment and redemption touching the hearts of many. The event was a resounding success. Dozens of dogs found loving homes, and awareness about animal abandonment increased significantly in the community. Meanwhile, Tom, who had once been reluctant to have a dog due to his allergies, became Buddy's most passionate advocate. He began researching animal-assisted therapy and proposed the idea of Buddy visiting hospitals and rehabilitation centers in his spare time. "Think about it," Tom said excitedly. "Buddy can not only save lives in emergency situations, but he can also help heal hearts and minds." Dr. Johnson, when presented with the idea, agreed enthusiastically. "Buddy has a special gift for connecting with people. This could be a wonderful extension of his work." Thus began a new facet in Buddy's life. Between his rescue missions and training, he now visited hospitals, bringing smiles to the faces of sick children, comfort to lonely elderly people, and hope to patients in recovery. Emily, inspired by Buddy's impact, decided to go back to school to study animal psychology. "I want to better understand how animals like Buddy can have such a profound impact on our lives," she explained. Jake, for his part, devoted himself with renewed enthusiasm to his studies, determined to fulfill his dream of becoming a veterinarian specializing in rescue animals. He began volunteering at the local shelter, learning everything he could about animal care. One day, as Buddy rested after a therapy session at the hospital, Sarah reflected on how much their lives had changed. "It's amazing to think that all this started with an abandoned dog at a country house," she said. "It wasn't just an abandoned dog," Tom gently corrected. "It was the right dog at the right time, found by the right person." Emily nodded, adding, "And it reminds us that we all have the potential to make a difference, no matter how lost or abandoned we feel." As the sun set over Asheville, the family gathered in Sarah and Tom's backyard, which was now Buddy's permanent home. The dog, sensing the moment of unity, approached and rested his head on Sarah's lap. Jake, petting Buddy, said with a smile, "You know, I think Buddy didn't just teach us about rescue and second chances. He taught us about unconditional love and the power of believing in someone." Everyone nodded silently, grateful for the lessons learned and excited about what the future might bring. Buddy had transformed their lives in ways they never could have imagined, and their journey together was far from over. As night fell, the family remained united, with Buddy at the center, a living symbol of hope, courage, and the incredible impact that an act of love can have on the world. 5 years had passed since Sarah found Buddy in that abandoned country house. Time had brought significant changes, but the heart of their family remained the same. It was a warm spring morning when Sarah received an unexpected call from Dr. Johnson. "Sarah," the doctor said with an excited voice, "I need you to come to the center with Buddy. There's something you all need to see." Intrigued and a little worried, Sarah gathered the whole family. Tom took the day off work, Emily postponed her graduate classes in animal psychology, and Jake, now a tall and lean teenager, jumped into the car enthusiastically. Upon arriving at the training center, they were greeted by Dr. Johnson, who guided them to an area they had never seen before. "We've prepared a surprise," she said with a mysterious smile. As she opened the doors, they found themselves in a hall full of people. There were rescuers, veterinarians, families with children, and even some familiar faces from the hospitals Buddy had visited. In the center of the room was a large screen. "Welcome, Dr. Johnson announced, to the celebration of Buddy's legacy." The screen came to life, showing a montage of images and videos. Buddy on his rescue missions, comforting patients in the hospital, playing with children at adoption events. There were interviews with people whose lives Buddy had touched, including the family he had rescued from the earthquake. Sarah, Tom, Emily, and Jake watched with tears in their eyes, overwhelmed by the impact their beloved dog had had on so many lives. But the surprise didn't end there. Dr. Johnson approached with an envelope in her hand. "In honor of Buddy and the incredible work you've all done," she said, "the center has decided to establish a foundation. The Buddy Foundation will be dedicated to training rescue and therapy dogs and educating about the importance of the human-animal bond." The news was received with applause and tears of joy. Jake especially was excited. "Does this mean more dogs like Buddy will be able to help people?" he asked enthusiastically. "Exactly," Dr. Johnson smiled. "And we'd like all of you to be an integral part of this foundation." The next moments were a whirlwind of hugs, congratulations, and plans for the future. Amidst the celebration, Sarah knelt beside Buddy, who was watching everything with his wise brown eyes. "Who would have thought that little abandoned puppy I found would turn into all this?" she whispered, hugging Buddy. "He just needed the opportunity to prove it." Emily, who was now working on her thesis about the impact of animals on mental health, added, "Buddy taught us that love and compassion can change the world, one heart at a time." Jake, with the confidence of a young man who had found his calling, declared, "And now, thanks to the Buddy Foundation, we can continue sharing that lesson with the world." As the celebration continued around them, the family gathered in a group hug, with Buddy at the center. Tom joined them, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "I think you always knew he was special," he said softly. They had come a long way since that day at the country house, facing challenges, overcoming fears, and discovering strengths they didn't know they had. Buddy, the dog who was once abandoned and alone, was now the heart of a family, the hero of a community, and the inspiration for a legacy that would continue long after him. As the sun set over the training center, bathing the scene in a warm golden glow, Sarah looked around with a smile. She saw Tom, who had overcome his fears and allergies to fully embrace Buddy. She saw Emily, whose career had taken an inspired turn because of her experience with Buddy. She saw Jake, now on the path to becoming the veterinarian he had always dreamed of being. And at the center of it all, she saw Buddy, the dog who had changed their lives in ways they never could have imagined. A dog who had taught them about unconditional love, courage in the face of adversity, and the transformative power of a second chance. "Thank you, Buddy," Sarah whispered, stroking his soft fur, "for teaching us that true heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and that love has the power to change the world." Buddy looked at her, his eyes shining with understanding and affection. In that moment, surrounded by his family and the legacy they had built together, Buddy knew he had found much more than a home. He had found his purpose, his family, and his place in the world. And so, with hearts full of love and hope for the future, Buddy's family prepared for the next chapter of their adventure, knowing that as long as they were together, anything was possible.